so much for making a point to be here this morning. I think it's really important that as parents we gather to talk more about the mission of the school, how it's lived out in the lives of our students, and the things we're constantly thinking about. Anyways, I think it's important that we get together, so I appreciate that you made time for it. We're gonna cover a lot, so we're gonna be moving quickly through a lot of content, and so I apologize for that in advance, but you know, as you get to know me, for those of you who are new, you'll get used to this. So we'll start with welcome and prayer from our board chairman. As we always do, we'll talk about Pacifica's purpose and mission. We'll then go through some updates on the operational plan. From there, we'll talk about some exciting changes to the Pacifica Circle, our new look for our 10th year. Next year is our 10th anniversary, so there's a lot of things we're doing next year in preparation to celebrate our 10th year. We'll talk a lot about formation and culture and what we're doing to help form young people and sustain and build a robust culture on campus. And then finally, an update on the Triton Lab. But before we get going on this, I want to introduce you to our founding board chairman, a man without which there would be no Pacifica. He called the very first meeting back in 2010 probably, and has been faithfully serving ever since. Please welcome Keith Carlson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do the welcome and prayer, but I'm going to switch the order. So let's start in prayer so that the welcome is even better. Join with me in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning, this day that you've given us, this time you've brought us together, and the school around which you've joined all of our lives, our families. We pray a special blessing on the students. In particular, we're thinking of our seniors as they're about to head off to their next adventure. Thank you for the lives that are being impacted by the school and for the lives that are doing your work of impacting these young people. We pray a blessing on the end of the school year for our faculty and staff as well as the students. We pray that they would have a wonderful summer and they rejuvenate and are excited, whether it be as students coming back, going off to college, going to work, or faculty and staff, that they get a good time of rest and are excited for the incoming class, who are now 8th graders and will soon start their Pacifica journey. We thank you for all that the school has been and the miracle of nearly 10 years of teaching your people to think and live well. We ask for continued blessing as we look forward, and let us have grateful and rejoicing hearts as we look back on what has been. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, welcome. Thank you all for being here. David mentioned already that we are looking at beginning the 10th year, which if you were there for year 0, you realize is a miracle. And I see some faces that have been part of that whole journey from that time. And it's a lot of fun to look forward, and David's going to take us through a tremendous amount of material about what's been going on and also what's coming up. But on behalf of the whole Board of Trustees, we have to thank you. As we first started, we had the 4 F's. We had the facility, we had family, which the families, which is going to provide the students. We didn't have nearly as many as are here right now. And you had the facility, the faculty. We had to get this great team together, and the finances, because this is a nonprofit. This is a charitable activity for the benefit of our community, and everybody gives in their own ways. And we've had a huge outpouring of support really since day one of friends who don't have students at Pacifica. It's one of the things I always marvel at. Some of you were there at Bloom when we got a tremendous donation from someone, and they don't have a student at Pacifica. They just love what's going on and how this place serves the community that they live in. All of you are obviously here. You're supporting in each way, most powerfully by entrusting the school with the education of your young people. And we thank you for that. And we thank everyone who has made this possible for so long. It has been a great journey, and it feels like we're coming to a kind of a new era with it, and it feels a bit more established, and we might know what we're doing at this point. but it still feels new. It still feels fresh. Every year, there's a new batch of kids coming in, and we have some new faculty coming in and new classes being offered. So there's always something new, but what has happened to get us this far is really miraculous, and without you, none of it would be possible. So on behalf of the board, thank you very much for everything you do, and again, for bringing these young people to be impacted by the great team that teaches them at Pacifica. So God bless. I'm going to hand it back to David, and away we'll go.
As we always do, we invite you to cultivate community. It's a significant aspect of our life together. So as we're wrapping up the school year, there's just a handful of things left. Tuesday is the Spring Arts Gallery. It's going to be at Coastline College. We're really fortunate to have a professional collegiate gallery space literally right next door. And so come Tuesday afternoon or evening, though I think there's a food truck and some other things, and you can enjoy some really incredible student art. 2 Fridays from now, so 2 weeks from now, is Senior Symposium, where all of our seniors, the last 2 weeks of school, they've been working on this project, most of them, some of them, depends, this year. But they're definitely working on it now, and they'll come back together as their final act as a student for Senior Symposium in 2 weeks and present those experiences, papers, projects, and so forth to the community. You're all welcome to join us for that. June 4th is commencement. That's a Tuesday at 4:30 right back here. It's a really beautiful time to celebrate the work of these young people. And then we've added a ton to summer at Pacifica. So if you have high schoolers and or middle schoolers, I invite you to look into that. There's one other special thing going on. Those are 2 freshmen. Pacifica baseball is going to the CIF finals tomorrow morning. Third year of the program. I think it starts 7 freshmen or something. I think it's 6 freshmen. It's really remarkable what that group of young men have done. Maybe you saw the video of Will Glywell and his vision of literally standing next to dunk tanks, inviting people into that program, and look what's come out of that. So if you want to join us tomorrow morning, it's going to be at Lake Elsinore Stadium. It's a little bit of a drive, but it's going to be worth it when the Tritons take home the W. So as we always do, let's start with our mission. And we talk about this in the context of our continuum. So Pacifica is a liberal arts high school devoted to teaching young men and women to think critically and wisely, instilling heartfelt joy and interest in learning, while encouraging lives of faith, character, and service to the glory of God. This is why we exist. Pacifica was not needed to be another college prep high school in Orange County. You had plenty of those. What we didn't have was a school that took seriously a mission like this one, who cared deeply about the formation of students. And so how do we do this? It comes to life in our culture. We ask good questions. We learn from others. We assume the best. Very, very difficult. Okay, all of these things are ideals. Okay, we got to constantly work. That's why we talk about it. We got to invite them in, invite ourselves into these things. Assume the best, pursue balance, fail forward, which really also means take good risks. Failure doesn't always mean you didn't hit the mark. It just means you did something you never tried before and it didn't go the way you want and you did it again. Act with conviction and compassion. The world desperately needs people that believe something and know how to love people who are different than them in their beliefs. This comes to life in our culture and is formed in our practices. So we're a liberal arts and sciences schools that cultivates human flourishing. The whole point of our education is to create humans. It's a big part of what we're going to talk about this morning. Relationships anchor formation. It's not enough to just be really smart. We know that 15-year-olds need to have a relationship with us to invite them into a deeper thinking about themselves, their life, the world that God created. Curiosity is at the heart of this. It has to be at the foundation. Young people are naturally curious and they get dulled over time, right? Your young person when they were a kid was curious about everything. They asked you so many questions and it got so tiring. You're like, would you please stop asking me questions? Remember that? Just me? Okay. As they get older, that dulls and we have to constantly bring that back out. Curiosity is at the heart of learning. Learning blooms in connected and dynamic spaces. That's people and ideas and space coming together, and ultimately it's fulfilled in service. And what I mean by this is taking what God has given you out into the world for the good of the world and God's glory. In the marketplace, in the home, in the church, in the wider world, that's what it means to serve God and others in that context. Hopefully, we hope that this will produce in our young people lives of contribution, well-ordered thinking, creative action in the world, not just in the arts, but in every aspect of life. An integrated disciple who's well-ordered their ideas and their faith. Someone who connects with a diverse group of people and then makes ethical and good decisions for themselves and for others. Now, at the heart of this, as I said, we always try to talk about a few of these things. I love to talk about relationships, anchor formation, because we're really serious about this. Every school talks about being relational. We all have it on our website. And so I have to constantly remind us that our team is all in and remind you time and time and time with examples to prove this. So here's Ben Vincent at the final color team battle of Family Feud. There was a dance-off because there was a tie. I would black out if I had to do this. But wait, he's going to go all in. I think he's still icing for this moment. And there it is. I think he regrets that moment every day since. But Jude Drebecki was going to take him to task. Here's a freshman getting up in front of the whole school. Teachers can lead freshmen into crazy things, which ultimately led the Orange team to winning the Pacifica Cup this year. Anybody have Orange team members? Oh, all right. You're excited. We're just excited the Red team didn't win. Anybody? For those newcomers, the Red team has won the Pacifica Cup, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row. And they will not let you forget that, okay? So, Orange team, congratulations. We're all excited. For you and for us. Hey, at the heart of this, why do we do this? Again, it's not just slapstick fun for slapstick fun. We take young people seriously. This isn't just another youth group game. Okay? They have plenty of that stuff. It's all about building relationships to drive them into a deeper joy, a joy that is found through freedom, a freedom that is found through doing things that are hard outside of your comfort zone and realizing their goodness in your life. I talk a lot about failure. I tell the kids I want them to fail all the time. What I really mean by this, and I try to qualify, is I want you to take risks. High school is a time where most people stop developing. They just stop growing because they stop taking risks because it's too socially costly, right? That's why when Jude gets up in front of the whole school and dances, you're like, oh, he just opened the door for himself and a ton of other people. Yes. Someone said yes. I like that. We have constantly got to do this. Now, I want to introduce you to a student who did not fail, but took a risk, and then took another one, and 4 years of that created something beautiful.
My first production at Pacifica, I was a freshman, and I auditioned, but I had never done theater before. So honestly, it was nerve-wracking and a little scary to take that risk. Before Pacifica, I had not been a risk taker. But through the opportunities that Pacifica has given me, I have been able to try new things. And I'm here now, 8 shows later. The stage, my castmates, and my directors became a safe space for me. I was able to be loud, dramatic, have fun, and be bold, not just as a performer, but also as a leader. Beyond the stage, I have been able to propose new ideas, embrace new leadership roles, and also engage with my castmates and people around me intentionally. Pacifica has given me a newfound confidence in pursuing the truth in my relationships, in my activities, in my academics, in my identity, and in my faith. In every aspect of my life, I want to take Pacifica's influence it's had on my growth in my confidence and in my intentionality in pursuing the good things in life.
Intentionality in pursuing the good things in life. I mean, isn't that what we want every 18-year-old to come away saying? Goodness gracious. By the way, that girl is a stud. Absolute stud. Hey, this doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we think deeply about what we're trying to do and how we might accomplish it, right? So every 5 years, Pacifica creates a strategic plan. Out of that strategic plan, we create annual operation plans. This is a new move that we did about a year or two ago to give us clearer direction on what we're trying to accomplish each year. So let's briefly go through our operational plan from this year to highlight some of the things we were trying to accomplish. I can't read anymore, so I'm going to turn my back to you a little bit. So we were enlarging the scope of Summer at Pacifica. I invite you to learn more about that on our website. Tons of cool opportunities. We revamped our senior projects. You can talk to Chris Stratton over here in the pink pants. He wants me to call them salmon. It's incredible stuff that's going on. Come see it. Increase the number and frequency of guest speakers. We want young people hearing from a whole range of people and a host of different experiences to give them an introduction of the possibility of their life. They limit their capacity all the time. And we have to pick them up and be like, no, you're capable of more, right? And then grow Standing's Prayer Club to be a broader school-wide life initiative. Prayer is at the foundation of the Christian life. If we can get kids praying, thanks be to God. A number of cool things happened this year. I mean, we had a who's who list of professors and leaders from around the country come and speak to our students. Encourage your kids to not take innovation block lightly. Show up. History is made by those who show up. Someone taught me that once. All right. B, community and formation. Improve the well-being of our students in their time at home by transitioning from a bring your own device to a one-to-one program. We're going to talk a bit about that and what we've learned. Reimagine and enhance Pacifica's approach to service learning. Thanks to Kelly Dunn and their team. They've done a great job doing that this year. Explore and then prepare for the transition from color teams to houses. We're going to talk a lot about that momentarily. And then last, establish a robust, purposeful approach to student health and well-being. We're taking the first and most important step next, and we're going to talk about that today. All right. This year, we got rid of iPads. We increased our thoughts around color teams and advisories. We've been reading lots of good books and thinking a lot about these things in our hands. D, advancing our mission. Successfully meet the funding needs of Pacifica Fund. Keith just mentioned how gracious and sacrificial our community is. Thank you. It's required. As we always say, it was going to take 15 years to found Pacifica. As a reminder, the first check for Pacifica was $10,000. The last two high schools in our area started with $35 million and $70 million. Thanks be to God, right? But it's going to take us 15 years to get to the point that we need to really establish us for a 100-year plus kind of vision. And so we're going to keep on that journey. We refined Pacifica's approach through planned giving, which we'll hear more about. And we've had some really incredible long-term generosity from friends who don't have kids at the school, and to strengthen and unify Pacifica's brand awareness, which we'll talk about. For those of you who didn't come to Bloom, I'm sorry you missed out. It was awesome. And that was my sort of backwards shaming plug to come next year. It's a ton of fun. More than anything else, it's there to celebrate the mission and to build community. And we might have started a new tradition when a Pacifica parent took the stage and the mic from a student to sing the final song. I didn't know he could sing like this. Yeah. Apparently he was in a band growing up, so we'll give him a pass. But I think we're gonna do a lottery next year to who gets to sing that song next. So we all took your names when you walk in. I'm gonna let you know at the end who's on tap for next year, so you can start practicing. As we talk about the strength of our brand, these two marks here have really done a great job representing us for the next 10 years, or for this 10 years. But we're gonna make some moves over the next 100, and so we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, leading our mission. So we did an audit of our advancement office. How do we invite people into the mission more and more? How do we successfully amend our conditional use permit? So at the beginning of this school year, Pacifica was only allowed to have 305 students. And by now, we're allowed to have 385. It's a huge gift. Think about that. That's an increase of 35%. More students get to be impacted by this mission. And then to secure, improve, and open Pacifica's new property, expanding parking, enrollment, and then inviting the Triton Event Center, which I'll give you an update here at the end, but a little sneak preview for some of you who haven't seen what's coming. All right, all of this happens because of our team. And so I always like taking moments to educate everybody on how we're organized. So at Pacifica, we use something called the Pacifica Circle. And we currently are organized around 4 offices. So the Office of Academics and Student Affairs, the Office of Co-Curriculars, everything in the top half of this circle basically is what's impacting students on a daily basis. Everything on the bottom half is what's supporting that. So you have the Office of Business and Operations and the Office of Institutional Advancement. Starting next year, I'm excited to say we've promoted Chris Stratton to join this group and broke up the top half into 3 different offices. Yeah. There he is on the right, instrumental in every aspect of that development. Here he is working with parents around their dreams and talking through that, and also that's us celebrating when we got our use permit. We were at the planning commission and we got a 7-0 vote. We're like, let's go have some dinner. He joins our faculty book groups and staff book groups. There he is. He's quite the philosopher. And here is all of us at the Tolkien retreat reading his favorite book, The Lord of the Rings. Luis is a dear friend. I'm going to miss him greatly. Grateful for his contribution and work here at Pacifica. When you see him, thank him. What he did was really a gift for the organization, and we're excited for him. We're excited for us. Pacifica is a great place. Keith told you we've been at it for 10 years, and this is our this is our strongest point yet. Think about that. Incredible people have been here the whole way, and this is our strongest point yet. So what does that mean? It means God has opportunities for other people. As we think about the Pacifica Circle, from the middle in, really these two middle folks, the heads and the officers, we're really about guiding and protecting the mission. The board really at first is the first point of this. But everything out here, supporting the mission and fulfilling the mission, is those outer rings. And so let's just think about if it's just the people in the room right now. If you look at all these bigger circles, that's our desire for mission impact. That's parents and students and community members and the broader Orange County. And if we just focus on these two groups, we're not really doing a good job. So these two groups, their job is to really push out and support the last two rings, and ultimately the ring that has faculty and coaches and academic teams and all the rest, because that's the kind of mission we want to have impact. As many kids and as many parents, as many people in our community experiencing the goodness of this place. All of this is run through our board of trustees, so we have an incredible board. Most of them have been there from year zero. We had a few that came on a little bit later. We've got Mark McCardle here and Keith Carlson here. I think those are the two board members currently present. Gentlemen, thank you, and to your spouses as well. So the Board of Trustees really is about guiding the mission, making sure it's successful in the lives of the school, and I'm its sole employee. And so through us, this is how we make decisions. At the bottom here is the decisions that our team makes, admissions, staffing, program systems. Here in the middle is how we have shared decisions and authorizations, finance policies, enrollment, employment. And at the top is really what the boards do. Mission, survival, leadership, major policy. Those men and women are really substantial in the work they've done. So also thank them when you see them, because Pacifica is who it is because of that group and their leadership. All right, let's transition now to One Mark, One School. We're turning into our 10th year. Like I said, we're going to be moving, right? We're going to keep going. Going into our 10th year, we really want to continue to position Pacifica as the best school of its size and kind, not just in Orange County, not just in the state, but really across the nation. We're excited about what we're doing, but we're focused here. But we thought what we wanted to do was make sure that the way in which we present ourselves, the way in which we identify ourselves is also position us with that kind of strength. And so as you look at what we've done over the last 10 years and what's sort of been leading us, it's beautiful. I mean, this is our founding. We're very excited. But as you can see, there's a lot of marks. There's a lot of confusion. And this is only probably a third of them, if I'm honest, right? You go to like the academic teams and all the other, everybody's taken our crest and made derivatives of it. It's like, who knows where it will go in 10 years. So we started looking at some of the top educational institutions in the country. And those who are not just good academically, but culturally and otherwise, they have simplified to be sort of one mark, one school, right? So you saw this with Notre Dame. Notre Dame has its academic seal, has its ND monogram, and its Irish person. That's it. That's all you see for ND. Baylor, who's the only Christian D1 or R1 research institution in the country, actually got rid of all of its marks and just has its BU. Wow. What are we trying to say? At Pacifica, we are all part of this community. We don't need 100 marks to represent us. We just need one that we can all rally against. So I'm excited to introduce to you, and by the way, this might be the most nerve-wracking thing I've done. So just keep your comments to yourself, unless you like it. Here it is, Pacifica's new look and feel. There we go. 3 identifying marks. We have our academic presentation of the school's crest and Gratia et Veritas. Never forget, grace and truth is foundational to Pacifica. Gratia et Veritas comes from the Gospel of John when it says Christ came on this earth. He was full of grace and truth, not one or the other, full embodiment of both. Pacifica seeks to be the full embodiment of grace and truth, and it lies underneath the school's crest. King Triton stayed King Triton if you want a reason why we are the only Christian school, maybe on the globe, to have a Greek god. We have a lot of reasons for this, and it's because even Paul went to those who didn't know God and said, hey, you have this God that you guys want to know about. Let me tell you about him. All right, so there are no gods that Poseidon and Triton trying to calm the seas and so forth in Greek mythology, and all of that is make-believe, but Christ actually parted the waters and walked on waters. We are constantly using myth at Pacifica to lead to the higher and real truth that is real for all of life. And so that connection is really important for us. So let's just take a little bit closer look. We didn't do much with our crest. We strengthened the shield so that it matched emblematically with the new monogram. So this still is what we are seen as primarily, especially in anything academic, will be noted by our crest. Everything else, co-curriculars, academic teams, any sort of spin-off, athletics and so forth, will be known through our monogram, the PC. We went with an emblematic monogram, not something very literal. We wanted to sort of blend in and be also sort of a piece of art and beauty as much as it was telling you something about the institution. And along that will always be King Triton. Same face, same look, but just a look much more substantive in terms of its structure and feel. Next to that, we've got sort of the new Pacifica script, which goes and coincides with the monogram, and then the new Triton script that goes with the Tritons. Really grateful for Clark Studios. Justin's here, he's in the back. Put your hand on Justin. Justin has been our brand partner from almost day one. Anything that you enjoy about our brand, Justin and his team has his hands on. So if you own a company or you're in this business and you're looking for a great brand partner on any level, I highly recommend Justin Clark and Clark Studios. They've done incredible things. They put together some ideas of what this might look like in different spaces and places. So what I love about this is you're always trying to, we're not baseball players, we're not artists, we're not academic, we're all Tritons. So we're all gonna have the same mark. We're not having debates about who's one and who's the other. We're all Pacifica, we are all the Tritons, no matter where you find yourself. And we have monograms built for every sort of way in which you might interact with the school. So this is an exciting time. Now it's gonna take time to roll this out. It's expensive. You know, we're not Notre Dame, so it's going to take us a couple of years. If you have gear that has the P on it or what have you, you can still wear that. But with athletics and other things, we'll be rolling that out. You might have noticed that our online store is down. That's because we didn't want you buying old stuff when we knew this was coming. So the new store launches the end of May. There'll be a lot of new custom gear. I think the kids will like it. There'll be multiple stores, right? So you'll have our online store, which is available 24 hours a day, and then we'll have your sort of team stores or unique items, which will only open 4 times a year. Okay, so if you want something that's specific to a sport or an academic team or what have you, that'll be available only 4 times a year for about a week and a half. That will open in May, and it will close early June, and we'll probably open again later in August or September. So just know that. Also, we're adding to the uniform. We're going to add a sort of a fun rugby polo using the orange monogram. The kids, most of them really love this. I think the girls are really going to enjoy this edition. And it'll add a lot of school spirit when you get into some of those fun game-like situations. All right, so that's our new look for the 10th year. Now let's move into formation and culture. All right. We are intentional about every aspect of our shared life together. As Pacifica approaches its founding goal of an enrollment of 350 to 400, we are reviewing our effectiveness in cultivating our culture, developing courage and grit, increasing opportunities for belonging, and caring for general student well-being. This year, we've thoroughly reviewed primarily 4 things: our advisory program and color teams, our shared experiences and opportunities for independent thinking and living. This is a really important one. And I'm going to make some statements in here that are going to be uncomfortable. And I just want to apologize in advance. But this is a really important thing that we're not doing with young people. 3, opportunities for failure and good risk-taking. I've kind of hit that a few times. We're going to talk about how to increase that opportunity. 7 years of senior exit interviews. We interview every single senior that has come through the school. It's our tradition. We'll do it again here in another week or 2. And we do look at that data and feedback. And then technology. What do we learn from iPads? What do we think about smartphones? All right, so what are we doing next year? Here's what's coming. We're combining our advisory program and color teams into Pacifica houses, while also strengthening our focus on formation and culture. So the whole purpose here is to achieve that goal. Increasing the number and variety of opportunities for shared experiences throughout the school year, while increasing opportunities for good risk-taking and practicing courage. That's going to take year-over-year time to do this. Giving more time to intergenerational mentoring and doubling down on student well-being, starting with the most important thing first, smartphones. Okay. From color teams to Pacifica houses, This is a lot of content, okay? All my images are gone. This is just like words. All right. So color teams, what's working? The all-school retreat is by far one of the most impactful things that happens at our school. Our seniors tell us every year, please don't mess that up, please don't change it, please cultivate that in our students. The students' identity with color teams and their chants, this is really significant to alumni. This is a really important thing for us because we want our alumni to feel connected to the things they created and started. I mean, back to what Keith was saying, these folks came when it was just an idea. It's theirs, we want to respect that. The annual lip sync contest over years has many iterations. It's jamming right now, it's a ton of fun. The color games and Pacifica Cup, associated students buy-in and ownership over all of those things. On the advisory side, what's working? Well, we have a 9-year commitment to knowing our students. And that's really the heart of Pacifica, and I think we've done a really valiant job of committing to doing that and finding new ways every year with growth to do it. Students are weekly gathering in grade level groups outside of the classroom for mentorship, belonging, what have you. And many advisories have been transformational over a 4-year span. If I had more time, I would tell you a story. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story because I saw Dr. Robertson. Dr. Robertson's first ever small group, second maybe, at the all-school retreat. Remember this one? I didn't have a small group that year, and he walks up afterwards, and he's scratching his head. He's like, so we were asking some questions, and it was kind of quiet, and then one of the guys, freshman, like, hey, I think I'm addicted to pornography. And Ben's like, all right, let's just see what happens. And then one by one, I think it was like 7 of those boys. Yeah, me too. It's hard being a parent. Those aren't kids that are different than our homes. Don't have some character in your mind, okay? That's us. That vulnerability doesn't happen very often. We have to be really careful. We have to talk to our kids about where to share those things, by the way. I don't know that was completely wise. However, fast forward in the senior year, most of those boys had something with their father. Dad was gone, divorce, something. Balmer gave the talk that year at retreat, and he talked about his dad leaving him at 5 years old and trying to find his identity through his high school years. I know I'm hitting some nerves here, but this is the stuff we're doing together, right? This is it. So the third talk, they go back and they get together as an advisory, and those boys sat together for an hour and a half, and prayed for each other, and prayed that they would be good fathers. They went back right before we did the skit night, right? We always put something full of joy right next to something really hard because we believe those things happen together, right? We have to hold sadness and brokenness alongside joy and goodness because there can be present at the same time. We don't have to only pick one. That's a false reality. So we put that right next to each other on purpose. Those boys got together and they started telling people what happened. Now think about this. A group of senior boys huddled around each other, praying and sharing stories, and everybody else was just like, what is going on? And that conversation of men caring for men and talking about being good fathers permeated the entire school for about 20 minutes. Stinking awesome. All right, what needs attention? Color teams is not integrated well into the rest of the school's life and culture. We tried, it just hasn't really got to the point we want. Everything at Pacific, we talk about integration. Break silo has to be embedded inside of each other. It's really hard to do, easier to talk about. So it's limited in their scope and experiences and offerings. And I don't mean that as a negative, it means primarily student life. But it can be so much more embedded in the life of the school. Many of the experiences are voluntary. Some are compulsory, like the retreat or others. The Triton Ball and some things, you don't have to participate, which also means you missing the opportunity to be Drew Duvrecki in front of the whole school, right? You don't always choose those things. You don't always like those things. It's not easy to be kicked in the butt. Get over there, get out there. And it's mostly one-dimensional. And you don't incorporate the fullness of the Pacifica experience. Again, that's more on the student life sort of silo side of it. Advisories. With enrollment growth, advisory groups have grown too large. We don't have enough discrete spaces. Kids are meeting outside, they're meeting in places that aren't helpful to real conversations. Two, not all advisories and advisees connect. You know that. Not all of your kids are connecting with their advisor. That's life. It's just part of how it goes. and they can be static and ineffective. So some staff are better with freshmen, others might be better with seniors, right? How do we think about that? And then lastly, advisories have felt have little meaningful connection to any other aspect of the school life or culture, and almost never connect with one another. So again, we have these two really important things foundational to our school that feel like they're sort of just floating on their own a little bit. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're going to the house system. So Pacifica Christian, the house system is a foundational aspect of school life where students are divided into 4 distinct groups known as houses. Sounds very similar. We have 4 distinct colors, and we have 4 distinct houses. We actually explored going to 5. It doesn't work for a number of reasons, and so we stayed with 4. Each house comprises students from all 4 grades, just like the color teams do, fostering a sense of community and camaraderie across all age groups. Houses promote camaraderie in academic, athletic, and extracurricular activities, again, trying to broadening the impact of these groupings. Houses also compete to earn points through various events, with the winning house receiving special recognition with the House Cup, no longer the Pacifica Cup. Maybe we'll keep the same name, we'll see. The Pacifica House system aims to encourage school spirit, teamwork, service to others, and a strong sense of belonging among students. Now, within each house, students are organized into smaller groups of students from the same grade and gender. These groups of 5 to 6 students will gather bi-weekly over lunch on Mondays for mentorship and belonging. So currently, advisory groups are about 10 to 12, not connected to their color teams, right? Now we're saying, hey, we're gonna break up grade level, gender-specific groups into 5 or 6 that will meet every other week at lunch. We think at lunch is really important. Breaking bread together, it's a little less tense, a little less focused on you. It's not like we're just staring at you, hey, we're having a meal. We think it's one of the best places to practice. I tell you to practice this in your home, we're gonna practice it at school. Think about this, all of our staff just gave up, or maybe rephrase that, invested 1 meal a week into kids. When you go back to our surveys, you know what the second thing was that they said? The first was the retreat, the second was our teachers eat lunch with us. That was so hard to scale. We're going back. Occasionally throughout the year, mentor groups will gather with other groups within the same houses for shared experiences. All right, each house is comprised of 8 house mentors. So they're no longer advisees or advisors, it's their house, and then each house has 8 mentors. Those will be faculty and staff with approximately 90 students, right? So you'll have 4 women and 4 male mentors in each house. Each house mentor will be a grade level expert and will lead 2 small groups of 5 to 6 students. These 10 to 12 students may rotate their mentor groups throughout the 4 years. So currently you have an advisor with 12 that meets every week. We believe that that same advisor with that same group, but they meet in half chunks every other week, will have more impact and be more meaningful. And we're gonna do it over lunch. That's primarily the main difference there on what's currently happening. And then those groups need some rotation because it's just not working. We just move people around a little bit. It just doesn't get as stale as static. And sometimes it will be working really well. And that'll be an art of the whole thing. As a freshman, you'll know the house mentors for your house. You'll get to know them over all 4 years of Pacifica. A student will have 4 different house mentors, allowing for a variety of connections and experiences. This will be a loss for some of you, honestly. If you've got a current advisor, you're like, I just love being with this one person for 4 years, that's going away, and I want to recognize that's a loss. But we also recognize that's not everybody's experience. And we need to share the wealth of different people and personalities interacting, because we all have to learn how to get along and experience the goodness of people that aren't like us. Now, the house games and experiences will happen monthly. Houses will gather together for the house games and experiences. This will primarily happen in the Triton Event Center, but we also plan to get off campus with this as well over time. This will continue to include things like Triton Ball, Friendsgiving is a house experience, but now we can integrate how the houses are serving and participating in these things with meaning, right? So they have ownership. And we hope to expand this over time to things like the annual hoedown and bull riding contest and the ultimate gladiator challenge, right? So imagine bringing in a line dancer and we're all going to do line dancing, which they all do at retreat. And then we're going to have a mechanical bull in the middle and we're going to see who wins, right? That's going to be a cool Friday, I think. Or we get a bunch of blow-ups and let jousting and boxing ensue. Now, this isn't for everybody. So we'll have other types of experiences that are better suited for students who aren't that kind of person. But we're all doing it together. There's no more hiding. There's no more selecting out. You need to be forced into spaces that maybe aren't your natural inclination and celebrate people who maybe aren't you. And further, we are exploring a variety of experiences designed to put tension on young people to help them practice courage, good risk-taking, and serving others. Well, here's one crazy idea. It's just an idea. But many kids do, what do they do in the summer? Junior guards, right? And a lot of people either love or hate jumping off the dock. It's terrifying. What if the whole school went to the Newport Pier every year? And as an advisory, you got to choose, am I doing it this year? And wouldn't it be cool if you just couldn't do it the first 3 years? And then that fourth year, you finally did it with your friend. Now, I don't know if Newport Beach is going to do that. Will O'Neill, if you're hearing me, let's make this happen. But those are the types of things. What if we went to Catalina and did a 10-mile hike loop? That would be hard for people. But what would be happening if that was easy for me and hard for you? And I'm like, hey, let's go, Mr. Vaughn, let's go. We got this. Then we all go jump in the ocean afterwards. We're thinking about how do we get them into nature, out of themselves, out of technology, doing hard things, learning more about themselves. We're gonna double down there. We don't know how long it's gonna take. Yeah. So all students will be placed into one of 4 houses this fall, and they'll be introduced to their house mentors. We're working hard to place students into the houses that correspond with their current color teams. Inevitably, many students will likely change their house mentor. This primarily will impact juniors, which is devastating. I don't know exactly, but that's the biggest impact. And it might change some of you, your mentor, your advisor, and your house color, but that will be a few number. But there's really no other way to do it. We've spent 8 months staring at that problem. Color teams will merge into the house system as each house will adopt current color team history and traditions while working to establish new traditions under their new name. Color teams is the focus of transition because this is the most unity and tied in that we have on campus currently and also with alum. And so that's really important, and that will drive it. And as a reminder, this was our very, very first color team battle at the all-school retreat. That's everybody. That's the school. There's so many stories to tell in that picture. And of course, we're blessed by the picture below of God's providence and blessing in the school. So, house names, colors, crests, stories, all of that is in process. We actually have a lot more answers than I'm going to give you today because I get one moment to bring the narrative, right? And I'm not ready to do that today. So all of that's coming. It'll come over the summer. We're excited to introduce houses to the school. All right, the next part of formation and culture, okay. What are we doing? We're making room for good things to run wild. That's what we're doing. That's the whole point of this next part of this conversation. Our team has spent a year, but really 20 years plus thinking about these things, watching children change, watching the impact of technology and screens primarily in the life of young people. I could tell you story after story after story. We've been reading a ton. We saw the good that taking your iPads out and putting our iPads in. I've heard so many stories of the reduced conflict at home, the better on task. Our kids are not gaming all day in class anymore. All that nonsense that it's just like they're 14. They can't do it. This has been a huge change for us. We've learned a lot. Something that really punctuated this for a number of us that are on the Tolkien retreat is that when we go on all school retreat, we take their phones. And I've had kids put Altoid boxes in their jeans because they can't imagine being away from their phone. It's a real issue. Like they're addicted. It's not just one, there's a lot of them. And so by the third day, when we leave for retreat, they're all like, can I get my phone? Can I get my phone? I mean, we just like, everybody's asking for it. And many of them are like, hey, yeah, that was great. I actually enjoyed not having it. The Tolkien retreat, though, was 7 days with no phones and no screens. Not even a car. Like, I don't think there's anything mechanical anywhere. Maybe the stove. So we left. We went to lunch, which was a 4-hour drive. Nobody mentioned the phone. We had lunch in Barstow or something like this. Nobody asked for their phones. We forgot we had them. Nobody remembered. We're driving home, and I think Stratton texted me like, hey, we got to pull over. I'm like, why? We're like an hour away. He's like, we haven't given the kids their phones, and the parents don't know to pick them up. So we pulled over, and we just got gas, and we got out of the car, and I think Stratton maybe and I, we had these boxes of phones, and the kids like, what are we doing? We're like, oh, you guys got to call your parents. And I kid you not, this is what happened. They just stood there, and they looked at it. And they stood there, and they looked at it. It was really, they're like, we don't want that. I'm like, guys, you got to call your parents because I don't want to be at school all day, you know? And like it was like, you know when Frodo looked at the ring and he's like, that's too much? That's what happened to them. All of them. They picked the phone up, they talked to their parents, they turned it off, and they put it down, and they walked in the van. And they're like, Lord, may that stay a little bit longer. Every single one of them. That was their experience. At that point, it was clear we had no choice. I talked too much. We're running out of time. I really want to show you Talia. G.K. Chesterton said, the more I considered Christianity, the more I found that while it had established a rule of order, the chief aim for that order was to give room for good things to run wild. Lewis said it this way, the real problem of the Christian life comes where people do not usually look for it. It happened to me this morning. It comes the very moment you wake up each morning. All your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals. And the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back and listening to that other voice, taking that other point of view, letting that other, larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in, and so on all day long. Standing back from all your natural fussings and frettings, coming in and out of the wind. So we're going to watch a 10-minute clip because I could tell you all the reasons that I'm concerned. You know them. I don't think we're in terrible disagreement on the problem. But I think it'd be better to hear from an expert who's been doing this around the country. So here's Jonathan Haidt talking with Tristan something, I forget the guy's last name. He runs the Center for Humane Technology. He did the AI dilemma. He also did the social dilemma. We'll watch this for a moment, and then we're going to talk about some of the implications.
I'm going to start, I'll just lay out just the thesis, and then I'm going to start with what has happened to education. So my argument in brief is that humans had a play-based childhood for millions of years, because that's what mammals do. All mammals play. They have to play to wire up their brains. But that play-based childhood began to fade out in the 1980s in the United States, and it was gone by 2010. And that's because right around 2010 is when the phone-based childhood sweeps in. Our children are now raised largely with a phone at the center of everything. And let's talk about what happened when that change happened. Another way I can summarize my book is by saying we have overprotected our children in the real world and we have underprotected them online, and both of those are mistakes. So a month or two ago, Derek Thompson, a great data writer, data analyst in The Atlantic, had an article when the PISA scores came out. PISA is the one global assessment of how students are doing around the world. 15-year-olds, how are they doing academically? And what Derek pointed out, which people were seeing in this new data, is that scores in math and reading and those were all fairly steady. And then all of a sudden, after 2012, they drop. So that's international. Around the world, our young people are, I shouldn't quite say getting stupider, but they're not learning as much as they would have a few years before. I wonder why. And then Derek didn't include this, but this is another data set we have. This is called the Nation's Report Card, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And here you can track what happened in the United States. From the 70s to 2012, it's slow. I mean, to raise the intelligence or the academic progress of an entire nation is really, really hard. But we were doing it. We were doing it, slow, steady progress in math and reading until 2012. And then it drops. Now everyone says, oh, COVID was so terrible. Yeah, and it was. And you can see that the drop with COVID is substantial. But the drop didn't begin with COVID. Our students began learning less after 2012. This is when the change happens. So now I'll transition to what my book is more about, which is the mental health. But my point is, across almost any assessment you want to make, Gen Z, born 1996 and later, is doing poorly. And it's very sudden. It happened very suddenly in the early 2010s. So we can see that I first saw this on college campuses. Greg Lukianoff actually was one of the first to spot it. Something was changing about students who arrived in 2014 compared to, say, those who arrived in 2012. Up through 2012, they were all millennials. But as we go on in the decade, you see a number of things rise a little bit. ADHD is up a little bit, learning disability up a tiny bit. But it's really this yellow line, which is psychological disorders. That's what rises fast. That's the big difference between Gen Z and the millennials, is that Gen Z has very high rates of mental illness, especially depression and anxiety. Now, This is data collected from university health systems, and what we see, so these are US undergraduates with a variety of conditions, and in all the graphs that I show, if you track the data up through 2010, you see nothing. That is, even in the 90s, and especially the 2000s, mental health was not getting worse, and on some measures it was getting a little better. The millennials actually were a little more mentally healthy than Gen X before them. Gen X is 1965 through 1980. But what you see as we go on into the 2010s is this. Everything goes up, but it's especially depression and anxiety. They are now at such high levels. It's just a normal part of being a teenager in the United States. These are college students, but it's just a normal part of being a young person now that you are depressed and anxious. It's not that the majority is, but it's almost. I mean, it's around 30 or 40% are depressed and anxious. This graph shows that it's actually just the young people, because as we go on in this period, what you see is that the lines for older people don't really change, but the youngest generation is really where the increase is concentrated. The rise is also gendered in a lot of ways. Boys and girls are doing much worse than they were before, but often the rise is larger for girls. Now, note, in this case, the percentage increase is actually slightly higher for boys, but they start at a much lower level. So they go from about 5% to 12% had a major depression in the last year. A big increase percentage-wise, but you wouldn't say, oh, boys, it's just normal for them to be depressed. They're not. It's 12%. Whereas for girls, it went from 12% up to nearly 30%. Which is a very large portion of our girls have had a major depressive episode in the last year. And I want you to notice, the data for 2022 just came in about 2 months ago, and I was able to add it to the graph. You can kind of see the COVID effect there if you look closely. See? COVID made things a little bit worse, but it really it went right back to the trend line. COVID is trivial compared to whatever happened in the early 2010s. And it's not just that they're saying that they're depressed and anxious. When we look at measures of behavior, this shows it's actually emergency room visits, psychiatric emergency room visits. I'm sorry, not necessarily psychiatric. This is for self-harm. Emergency room visits for self-harm. Again, no trend before 2010, and then after 2010, girls go way, way up, especially preteen girls. The CDC divides the data up into 2 age groups. The younger age group is almost always where you see the biggest percentage increase. Something really, really hit 10 to 14-year-old girls very hard in this country in the early 2010s. And it's not just self-harm, it's also suicide. Which boys commit more suicide than girls. They tend to use lethal means such as a gun or a tall building. Girls make many more attempts. But when we look at actual deaths, what we see is a very large and sudden increase. I mean, this is quite astonishing. Between 2012 and 2013, the suicide rate for young teen girls went up 67% in a single year. And it wasn't a blip. It wasn't like an error that it went down the next year. It was the first leg of a rise up to 134% increase. And it's not just us. It's happening in very much the same way in all of the English-speaking countries. This is Britain for self-harm. We see the same pattern. And this is Australia's psychiatric emergency department visits. Again, no trend before 2010, and then afterwards way up for boys and for girls. Same in New Zealand. Similar data from Scandinavia. It's not all over the world. We don't see this in East Asia, but it is all over Northern Europe and the English-speaking countries and North America. Now, why? Why would this pattern be happening in so many countries at the same time? Everyone has a theory. People hit me with all kinds of theories to explain it. And I say, fine, that might work for the United States, but why did that cause girls in Australia to start cutting themselves? It doesn't make any sense. And I think there is really only one theory on the table. I keep waiting for someone to propose another. Nobody has, which is what I call the great rewiring of childhood. It happened in 2 phases, as I said, the end of the play-based childhood and then the birth of the phone-based childhood. I'll just show you a few more slides, and then I'll invite Tristan up, and we'll continue the conversation. Something I didn't realize until I really got deep into writing the book. You find this graph at Our World in Data. They graph out how adoption of various technologies, and for communication technologies, because they're network issues, there's always a brief period where everyone is getting it. You know, once some people are getting a telephone, you have a point, everyone now is getting a telephone, that sort of thing. And what we see is that the first wave, the personal computer, so many older people like me remember when you got your first IBM PC, or out here, I guess you would have gotten a Mac, whatever. So that was adopted, and you could do WordStar and other things like that. But it's not until you get dial-up internet that it really becomes useful, and then that rises very fast in the 90s and into the 2000s. And that first wave was wonderful. It was magical. It didn't do anything bad to mental health. It corresponded with the period of the greatest growth in democracy ever. So we were all techno-optimists. This stuff is great, isn't it? But it's this second wave. This is what did in Gen Z, at least in my telling in the book. It was the beginning of social media, which we used to call social networking systems, because it was a way you would just connect and you'd share your profile. Social networking systems are adopted very, very rapidly, even before the smartphone. But once the smartphone comes out as well, those two together are by far the fastest technological adoption in history, although I think maybe ChatGPT might have been faster. I don't know. I don't have the data. But this transformed things just in the blink of an eye. And this is exactly when teen mental health plummets, and also democracy, which democracy reached a high point around 2011, 2012, and now it's been drifting downward, the number of democracies and their quality. So I'll just to illustrate, childhood used to be, all of older people, I'm sure your fondest memories are not, with your parents, and they're not sitting watching TV. You're outside playing, you're having adventures. It used to be just for younger people in the audience. If you look at the bottom left picture, it used to just be a thing that you could ride around town in a bicycle with an extraterrestrial in your basket. It's just something that we did. Whereas now, childhood is basically this. If you're a boy and you want to play video games with your friends, you have to go home alone. You can't go over to your friend's house. You need your headset, your controller, your screen. So childhood now is much more solitary than it ever has been in human history, and the results, I think, are not good. So there are so many different avenues of harm. In fact, in our brief time, I barely have time to just read them. I'll just read them for the audience listening in. Normally, if I had the full hour, I would go through them. I'll just read them. The opportunity cost, kids are on for 9 hours a day, 5 hours a day of which is social media, social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, behavioral addiction. Those affect everyone, boys and girls. Then I have a whole chapter on why social media harms girls more. Girls are more sensitive. Boys and girls are just a little different in their social needs. And so I'll just list them. Visual social comparison, perfectionism, relational aggression. Girls share emotions more than boys, including anxiety and sadness. Girls are more susceptible to sociogenic transmission, especially via TikTok. And girls are more subject to sexual predation and harassment. It's just more part of your daily life online, if you're a girl, that you're approached by older men with bad intent. But the boy story is a little more complicated, not quite as obvious, but my research associate Zach Rausch and I think we worked it out pretty well, drawing on Richard Reeves' book of Boys and Men, that boys have just been withdrawing from effort in the real world since the 80s, 70s or 80s, and getting lured ever more into the virtual world, where they can get their desires for coalitional violence, that is war and sports, pretend. You can get your desires for that sort of play satisfied in video games, and your desire for sex from pornography. So boys are just retreating from the real world. So we get rising levels of porn addiction. Multiplayer video games take up a huge amount of time. They're great fun. They're incredibly immersive. And so anyway, the point is boys' lives have been upended too. It doesn't show up as much in depression and anxiety. It shows up as just withdrawing from effort in the real world. Boys are just not really doing the things, they're not making the efforts and experiencing the failures and setbacks that would strengthen them to grow into men. The proposal, Tristan and I will talk about this, but there's actually a way out, because almost all the parents hate what's going on. All the teachers hate what's going on. All the principals and heads of school hate what's going on. And guess what? Gen Z hates what's going on. They see it. They're not in denial. They really see that they're trapped. And you say, well, why do you waste your life this way? Why don't you just get off? I can't because everyone else is on. So it's a social dilemma. It's a collective action problem. And so what I'm proposing as the way out is if we all just agree to adopt 4 norms, even if Congress never comes to our aid, even if Congress never does a damn thing to fix the mistakes it made in the 90s that set us up for this, including not just requiring no age verification, but saying, oh, and by the way, you can't sue the companies either. They have blanket protection from lawsuits for what they do to our kids. So even if Congress never fixes the mistake, and I should say there is real hope for a bill, COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. That is the one thing that Congress might do. State legislatures, including Florida and Utah, are actually doing, I think, a great job of trying out approaches that actually will make a difference. But if we just do these 4 norms, if nobody gives their kid a smartphone before high school, just give them a flip phone. That's what the millennials had, and they were fine. Okay, some of you may not think so, but in terms of the mental health data, the millennials were fine. No social media before 16. That's going to be the hardest one to do, and that's where we really could use legislative help. But we can do it even without that. Phone-free schools. This is an absolute. This one is easy. This one is the biggest bang for the buck. This one can be done all over the country by this September. You just buy phone lockers or yonder pouches, and kids, you need the phone to get to and from school. I understand that. But if anything that can text must be locked up, because if they have anything, including a Chromebook, if they have anything that can text, and some kids are texting, they all have to be texting, because nobody wants to be the only one who didn't know about the thing that happened in 3rd period. So we have to go phone-free schools, and the kids love it once they detox. After a couple of weeks, their brains actually enjoy talking to other kids. And we need much more childhood independence and free play. If we're going to greatly reduce screen time for kids, we have to give them back something fun, something normal, which is play with each other, hanging out with each other, having adventures with each other. So, and just a final note, I teamed up with Eric Schmidt, who has a variety of concerns about AI as a technologist, and then me as a social psychologist. We wrote an essay laying out how set aside the risks of whether AI is going to become sentient and wipe us all out. Let's just put all that stuff aside. Let's just look at what social media is currently doing to children and democracy. What's going to happen as now everybody can use AI to fake everybody else? What's going to happen? It's going to get even worse for kids, even worse for democracy. So that's an argument that we made that Tristan and I will, I'm sure we'll be talking about in just a moment. And so that's my presentation to you. My argument is that the play-based childhood was replaced by the phone-based childhood, that we have overprotected our kids in the real world and underprotected them online. We have to reverse that. And that's it. I welcome...
How are we doing? Hey, that's a lot. I hope most of you, that wasn't the first time. If you want to hear more, there's 100 interviews and 1,000 podcasts with him and others saying all very similar things. As a reminder, the Christian faith is a faith of hope. There's ways out. The other thing is part of this, dare I say, is a catechesis issue. How do we train our children? What do we put in front of them? How do we build these narratives for them? And we are partners together for that. So let's just highlight the 4 things he said. From my vantage point, if you care, I agree with every single one of them, and I haven't done every single one of them in my home. Fair enough? Okay. My daughter got a phone before high school. I won't do that again, just to be honest with you. She's crushed it. I'm super proud of her, and I wouldn't do it again. We can talk about it later if you want to know. But it's not because she hasn't done a good job with it. It's because of everything else. Even when they do the best job they can. It's a loss. All right, no social media before 16, phone-free schools. You see where I'm going. Play, responsibility for the real world. We're trying our best to increase that inside of our work at Pacifica. I'm going to add something to this. I think he talks about this idea of the collective action problem. This is the thing we all get stuck in, of like everybody's doing it, and if they're not, they're the only one. 16 is another collective action problem. Some of you guys turn 16 at the end of freshman year. Some of you turn 16 when you go into junior year. If we all said, hey, we're going to agree that social media shouldn't have a place starting now, I mean, I can't tell you what to do here. It's not something I can mandate. I would strongly encourage it. However, if we said 16, we're going to have that issue as soon as one of the kids' friends turns 16. If we all say, hey, junior year, you just got the summer between there to figure that out. So if you're interested in that, I would change the narrative to junior year, and I'd invite your friends to do the same thing. because that way we all do it at the same time. It's the big collective action problem. Juniors, when you're a sophomore, you'll get there, figure it out. Don't worry about it. All right. I don't have time. I talk too much. I was going to go over a few things, but just as a reminder, I love this quote, we are forever elsewhere. This is what high school feels like all of a sudden. They're not with us. The thing you pay for all the time is constantly getting chipped away at. They're wasting your money, and I'm letting them do it. How's that? That doesn't feel good. 5 hours a day is typically the amount of social media used for the average kid. 9 hours on the thing every day and 240 notifications. Every time they're trying to do something else and be present, nope, bing, I want your attention. And they give it to them, and you know that. I'm not going to go through all this. He went through it. Again, hope is the disposition. I'm going to hit this again. We overprotect our kids in the real world, and we underprotect them online. I would invite you to consider how you are doing that. Spend the weekend and journal. How are you overprotecting your kids in the real world? I didn't go through this, but he's talking about every time you jump in and solve problems for them, they don't grow up. They don't mature. They don't build social neurological connections that help them be the adult you want them to be when they leave your home. We are part of the problem. We've got to let them fight their own fights. Listen, I get there's a point, okay? So this is all within reason. We've got to let them do hard things, do things that make us afraid. Our fear can't meet their fear. Our anxiety cannot meet their anxiety. We parent with the end in mind. Who do you want leaving your home? People are fed up.
What I imagine,
Basically what he's saying is, hey, some of you have courage, bust a hole in the door. Nobody liked communism. One person said no to communism, and the whole thing fell down. That's all it takes. Pacifica was the last school to shut down during COVID. It was the first school to go back. We're proud to be the first school to make more room for good things to run wild. Yes. We believe this is a collective action moment and that not everybody is going to agree with us. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that we're not always in agreement, and you're going to get a chance to give me feedback and talk through it. But we're going foam free in the fall. And I just want to say, why did we do it? We always start with the why. We did it for joy's sake. We started Pacifica to increase the joy of young people for all of life. This is not doing it. So first and foremost, we're making room for good things to run wild for joy's sake, for the good of our children, their development, their addiction, everybody wants to talk about well-being, and nobody wants to know anything about their phones. Any good therapist, if you go to therapy and your kid's struggling, you know what the first thing they're going to tell you to do if they're good? Hey, take the phone away for 30 days. And if they don't tell you that, you should not go there anymore because they're not telling you the truth. And we need to create a plausibility for another way. If we think it's a problem now and we don't show them any other way to live with well-ordered lives on this, it's not going away and it only gets worse. Little kids, little problems. Big kids, big problems. For the sake of our mission, thinking and living well, you all came here because of this mission, and this is absolutely antithetically opposed to what we're trying to do. To attract and retain high-caliber faculty. I mean, listen, we've told you we're trying to do a good job with this. We made a promise. But we're also tired of babysitting. We're just tired of it. You guys have 1 or 2 or 3 of these in your home. How hard is that? It's miserable. I have 360 of them. It's like, and if we want the best faculty, they're like, listen, I came here to teach and to form kids. I did not come here to police their technology. So we're done. It's the right thing to do. And I don't mean to sound like I have attitude. I don't. I'm trying to give you strength of conviction because you're going to have to fight the fight with me, right? We believe this decision will do this. We don't just do it for mission. We do it because we believe it will have a good effect. We think it will increase joy on campus. We've seen it. We know this will happen. And it will increase real human interactions. In a world with AI, and I don't even want to go into that whole conversation, especially for boys, AI is going to destroy human relationships. It's going to put young men, okay, never mind. You should go look, if you have a boy, you need to be really concerned about what this is going to do to sideline them in so many ways. This is true for girls, but there's a very particular thing for boys I don't have time to go into, but I would love to talk to you about it later. They have got to build human relational interactions, and the girls have to do it either. Part of that advisory thing, by the way, is I'm going to force guys and girls to hang out in advisory. We are. Because they don't do it anymore, right? They're just hanging out in silo groups. So we're going to increase social, emotional, spiritual well-being. We hope it will increase friendship and belonging. It will reduce distraction and conflicts. By the way, conflicts will always exist. There will always be fighting and difficulty in high school. People are always going to be making fun of each other and hurting each other. That's not going anywhere. But its ability to viral and scale during the school day, and I think its total use will decrease because some of this stuff is just happening in real time because they just, you and I would make a mistake and nobody would talk about it. Like the two people around us, we'd have a breakup and 3 people would know about it. There's a breakup now, and before third period, everybody knows. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're a big school or a small school. In fact, it's not just on our campus. If a breakup happens at school X, we're talking about it. Like it's like, all right, and we're going to chip away at the real harms that we're experiencing. Sleep deprivation, which by the way, I can't really do much about. You can though. If your kid has their phone in their room, take it away, even if they're 18. If your kid has their phone in their room at night, take it away. I can't tell you how many of them tell me, and they show me, like, I'm texting at 2 a.m. Put the thing in your room. They need your help. Again, I'm saying stuff, and I don't mean to be offensive if I am. I stare at this all day. People are being destroyed. Your kids, our kids. Social deprivation, they're losing how to be a human. You know who to be the most successful people in the 21st century? Those who know what it means to be a human and how to interact with humans to solve human problems using technology. If we're all like this, doing ones and zeros, those people don't exist. And those who do will lead. He talked about we're not reading. Everybody says, like, why don't you start a leadership program? You know what the greatest thing to define leadership is? Read. Leaders are readers. We teach kids how to read and be human, interact with humans. We are the best leadership school in town, and I don't need a program to do it. All right, this one's tough. We think it will be a net positive to reduce communication between children and parents during the school hours. You're part of the problem. And I want you to own this because it's really important. Mom and dad, myself included, we're part of the problem. We're not letting our kids grow up. We're fighting their fights. We're too involved in their lives. There's time for intervention, okay? Just take all that and put it over here. That's not what I'm talking about. If they forget their lunch, don't bring it for them. Please. If they don't bring their homework, don't bring it for them. Take a 0, please. You want an 18-year-old that's different than the 18-year-old we're creating. You do. It's what you want. So we desperately need to increase the independent decision-making of teens during a phase of life where they must grow in independence, personal responsibility, interpersonal conflict resolution. Kids don't know how to solve problems, so they just leave groups. And then they leave that group, and they leave that group. Next thing you know, they're alone, and they're shocked because they don't know how to solve a conflict. We've got to solve conflicts if we want deep, meaningful relationships over time because stuff happens. We hurt each other. It sucks. It's really miserable. But you have to push through, and they have to learn how to do that now. Our kids are too dependent on us, and we need to stop. Okay, how is this going to work? I don't exactly know. But it's going to be awesome. We've been talking and talking and talking, problematizing. It's going to be one of these two methods. Either they come in, they put it in a locker, or there's this pouch that only a special magnet opens, right? That's generally how it will go. Here's what we do know. Students will not access their phone during school hours. When students arrive on campus, they'll be expected to secure their phone and smartwatch. Don't go buying smartwatches. Don't do it. If they can text, the whole thing's done. Okay, deep breath. They're going to have to put that in their pouch or their locker before class starts. If they're late, they're late. This is part of their responsibility. Students will receive their phone or open their pouch at the end of the school day. Remind you, for pickup people, we have 10 minutes between the bell and pickup starting. They have plenty of time to do this. If they have early dismissal for any reason, they'll retrieve their phone at that time. There'll be a way to do this. Any phone seen during the school day will be confiscated. This isn't a new rule, but now there's no ambiguity. You know your kids are really good at arguing, and we make them better. I'm sorry for that. And they find every loophole, and they'll take you to the task on this. It's like, goodness. If we see it, boom, we'll put it in a bag, we'll write their name on it, then get it at the end of the day. If it happens repeatedly, there'll be other consequences. At some point, you'll be coming to campus to get it yourself. We're going to make it a burden on you. And if someone doesn't really want to buy in, we'll ask them to leave. I'm not babysitting kids on this one. That won't be right away. But my point is, you come here because you want this. We want this. And we want young people over time. They're going to make mistakes. Don't miss part of life. I talk about failure all the time. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about willful disobedience. Like if you don't want it, that's fine. This is what we want. All right. Did I hit all those? Yeah, I did. Okay. All right. What are we giving to young people besides all that other cool stuff? Check this out. We are giving them 6.5 hours a day, 1,170 hours a year, and 4,600 hours over 4 years of not having this. How do you build habits? You have to practice them. Do all habits that are good for us, are they enjoyable? No. Our life with Christ, oftentimes when you don't feel it, you got to wake up and you pray and you read the scripture and you lean into that relationship because it will carry you through. The same is true on this stuff. We don't always want to do this. And we're going to ebb and flow, but we're going to give them that taste. I talked about a bloom. Give them a taste of goodness so when they leave, they don't know where to find it and how to cultivate it. They're going to go, I was at a place once where I didn't have all this and it was good. How do I recreate that now in my adult life? If we don't give that to them, they won't know how to do it. You and I at least remember a life where that didn't exist and we can compare and contrast. They cannot. We're going to give that back to them. Okay, so there's like 3 common questions I think I've gotten as parents are starting to figure out what's happening. So how will parents contact their child during the school day? We're going to email. That's where you're going to go. You're going to email your kid. It's going to be a little bit slower. The good news is now they're going to check their email because I need some help, all right? And if necessary, in case of emergency, call the front desk. But I'm going to ask you to contact them less. We're part of the problem of them growing up. Okay? Let's talk about it if this is confusing or I'm saying something that's isn't resonating. Okay? But start thinking about that. What about emergency situations? So we talk to a lot of folks in the emergency first responders, FBI, police, so forth, almost across the board. They find that student phone use to be a hindrance in moments of a serious emergency situation. It increases misinformation, panic, and distraction from following the lead of the emergency management team, and then it creates misinformation throughout the entire community. A couple years ago, we actually had a real scare. If you remember, some of you were here for that. Nothing happened, but it was just sort of a misinformation. And so we had to act here, and then I think within 2 minutes, 3,000 people were texted. No less. And then those people started texting. And we on the ground were trying to figure out how to lead, what's going on, and how to move kids. And what were they doing? Texting you and their friends. It's not actually a good thing in a real moment of emergency. Second, the school uses several emergency management systems with multiple layers of redundancy to communicate with students in that situation. And lastly, the most significant emergency that is already impacting your students every single day, which is far more alarming, is their 24/7 access to smartphones and the internet. That's the emergency you should be most worried about. What if my child wants to call their parent during the school day? We're exploring house phones. We're actually exploring buying a replica phone booth. I mean, wouldn't that be fun? Let's just get in the phone booth. If they got to call you and it needs to be private, let's give them a private space. I don't know if I can afford this, but if anybody wants to gift it to me, But I think that would be cool. I think the kids would get a kick out of that. Hey, I got to call my mom. This is actually fun. Or, maybe we can get the bat phone or something. I don't know. But we'll have some fun with it. Hey, I've thrown a lot at you. And I've made a lot of strong statements. Again, I want to be seen as a partner and someone who cares about you and your kids, not as an ideologue. So we're going to send out a survey next week. The survey is only going to have 2 things on it. What do you think? Which, by the way, even if everybody said we don't like it, we're still going forward. And I'm not trying to be conflict. I'm just letting you know that's how serious we are and how much we believe this is the right thing to do. But second, I know there are real questions. You all have experiences that we don't have, and you have real questions of how does this work? We need to solve this. Those that we think are reasonable and things that we can solve, we'll spend the summer looking at those and trying to find solutions. And some of those solutions might take more than the summer to solve. But we do want to have feedback and engage with you, and so we'll solicit your feedback probably next week. We're excited to make more room for good things to run wild. Now, just momentarily, because this has been a big part of everybody, and I apologize, I'm 5 minutes over, but I'm going to move quick now. Last year, we introduced the introduction of the Triton Lab. For those of you who don't know about the Triton Lab, to increase the enrollment, which we talked about, that 305 to 385, we had to grab more parking. To grab more parking, which took 2.5 years, we actually took down a building, so it was the only way to get parking. I've been working to transform that building into offices because our team's growing. And then the Triton Lab, which will be a center for strength, conditioning, recovery, and other things. A little bit of where the lab is. So you've got Monrovia, 15th, Production, and 16th. Production's the street none of you are supposed to go down. And by the way, you guys do a pretty good job with that. I don't see you on Production. Thank you. That dead is in the Carlson Hall. So it's right there in that corner. That's where the building is, walking distance. And that will be turned into a place of a lot of fun for 85% of the students, places for strength and conditioning, high performance equipment for basically every sort of athlete, indoor batting cages with integrated technology, golf simulators with also integrated technology, and a place for recovery, whirlpools and other things. A lot of cool stuff, right? Over the past 11 months, we have been seeking the necessary city approvals and raising funds. It's just taken a lot longer. And by the way, the city's for us. They're incredible partners. We're grateful for the city of Newport Beach. Sometimes it just takes longer than we would like. And so we're doing that. It's been helpful because we needed more time to raise funds. We plan to break ground once we receive necessary approvals and funding, and we hope both of that will be later this summer. And it's about a 5-month construction timeline. So it won't open in the fall like I hoped. It's going to be open sometime, in the fall, winter. The original budget for that was $1.75 million. You can kind of see how it breaks down. But like in anything, when it gets stuck with the city, costs go up, yeah? So that actually went up $200,000. So we've raised an incredible $1.4 million towards this project, which we're so grateful for the generosity of our community. And we're still seeking another $465,000 to get that thing done. We're moving the advancement office over there as well as the business office, freeing more space up on the main campuses for students and student formation, top half of the circle, right? Moving bottom half of the circle off campus. And so that should open up in the fall. If you have any questions on that or in a desire to help us get to that goal, please let me know. I'd love to talk with you. For that, hey, I went a few minutes over. I appreciate your attention, your enthusiasm. It is a sacred honor to partner with you. And so again, I know I came out strong. If you have any questions, come talk to me. We'd love that. Please help us drink this coffee, get to know each other if you can hang around a little bit. God bless you, and I look forward to celebrating the end of the year. All right. Bye, friends.